itself, 949 feet, or some maps, some they got 2 feet more, and other times got 951. This is 50 feet short of the mountain. That's why they said it's the highest hill in County Limerick, because it was 50 feet higher to be a mountain.
How big is Mount Brandon?
The home of Knockfierna, and there's a cave on the far side which takes you off into, and it takes you down to Carrigagunnell Castle off over here on the banks of the Shannon. And there is a dolmen in Giant's Grave about 100 yards on this northern side of the hill. And here beside us was something like, I suppose, where the bush is over those that little green mound. Little heaps like that were here, and maybe against something similar to the wall behind you, that type of thing. Or this piece over here, that is the shape where one zoomed in that they might be houses. So in the course of digging, of picking out the stones, you will notice in the houses that on the bottom portion you have the original stone foundation, and higher up in you have the 1996 version of the 1850 construction. Because the hobs give that little bit of an extra feature, even though they mightn't necessarily be as old as the house right beside it. Aileen, the land McNamara, thought it was bed and breakfast. We were incorporating the modern his and her type bungalow scheme as she came over the hill. She thought she was in business. But they are actually built on original foundations, so that is the positions of them. The door mightn't have been correct, because sometimes with the digging and the poking out we might get the doors right, but in most of them the doors are correct. And we can assume they hardly stuck the door facing northwards anyway for the northern breeze. So if you follow me or look in there on your own, you'll be fine. One not touched, it wouldn't blend in together, which seems, you know, proper and reasonable suggestions such as two sods. The next one now, Pat McNamara, the man beside me from Clare, with license, he came, he's a fine musician. We wanted to choose him before he goes, before the water run out of his eyes. I think maybe it is the talk of all those people who died of starvation, when the families causing him to weep. Maybe it is the call we know not. George Daly, the man with the cap, he's a Kerry man. And we won't hold that against him this evening, but we were here in what was it, George LePage?
1990.
1996 years ago, we had the. I should have introduced David O'Reilly there, the young lad with the fair hair, and his brother John here beside us. There are two committee members, secretary, and Paddy Benson, of course, another one beside us, and Nora here beside us, and Nelly, and they've all been with us. And sometimes they phase out and then they blow back in again, but we're delighted to blow in again this evening.
On the 8th of December, Pat, by the way.
The 8th of December 1990, that cross up in the hill. It had been put up by a committee here in 1950, and it was wired through to the rural electrification scheme in 1952. They tell me now I'm not blowing from over behind the smoke at the other side. And it was lit and wired in 1952 by the Fitz, who lived down the bottom of the hill, and all the local people in this area in 1952. We have all the records and the receipts of the sugar and the raffles and the collections and everything that took place at that time. And they have a private line coming, 10 poles or 6 poles coming from down the main road up to this. It's a private line, completely private. So that was passed on to us then about 10 years ago when we come in. And the local young lads then decided they didn't like the lights and the bulbs and the glasses, so they pulled them all off the place and broke them out. As George said, on the 8th of December 1990, it was -6 here at 4 o'clock in the evening. And George and others couldn't open the door of their cars when they came back down off the hill after getting that rewired and his lighting still. Sorry, am I?
No, you go.
You want to get to
Yes.
The window. Oh, the window. Chimney over here, and you have no chimney in this. Go to the back.
Or you remove the stone outside and the kind of a channel came in the very old ones, yeah. Sorry. Now we'll keep it rolling. That one you can see. That one you can see where the line of the wall is. There is the original wall, and it was all stones all over. And as I said a while ago, Avril Dive was gone when they got down to the next couple of stones. She was here on Saturday one time. So you can see the mud, and it's quite easy to see that it was all there original, and the hobs, and there's quite a deep place for the ashes. And most of you would remember people sitting in the hobs, no, even the smaller ones. Paddy Buckley was asking there a while ago. Paddy Buckley, I should have introduced him, the young lad with the blondie hair as well.
Yeah, Blondie is right.
From Tipperary Midwest Radio.
And my friend there, Joe.
Sorry?
Joe and Cyril as well.
Joe and several fellows as well.
Well, he's not gone that high yet, no.
And there isn't bellises, I'm sure there wasn't bellises at that particular time, but in the older houses we found that one of the ones over the two small houses beside the gate, they had a little hole coming through and a stone, and they would have removed the stone from the outside and to create a draft through and up in under the fire to keep it lighting. It was also the old traditions of May, which will probably gather during the course of the night, that they lit the fire on May Day, and that fire was kept lighting until the following morning. It never quenched until they quenched it on May Eve again, and then it was lit. The fires were never quenched. They usually got the ashes and piled it up, and either did they leave the fish hogs and the May till later on, but they didn't give a fire to anybody, so to speak. They go from house to house with coals and shovels and things like that. There are a number of houses of this size around here. We have this one done, and there's one just at the far side of the O'Malley's house down in the green field. The side behind you there you will see O'Malley's house. She was the captain of the White Boys, and just beyond that is another house similar to this one in style, or size rather than style. This one gives a little porch. Again, you will see the bottom part that has got the original stones, and it's also a little porch coming out, which is rather unusual as well. There's a number of that type of foundation still around the hill, quite a few of them, but we just rebuilt two of them at the present time. And just over here, a small little bit, we'll walk over and you will see the cause of all the problems that happened at that time, where the potato was the main diet of the people. And you will also, if you're not looking out, you will see the fine land and the fine cattle they would have been looking down at, but they couldn't touch. Cattle are living down Mark Johnson. Potato ridges in different parts of the hill. That field actually there behind the green field is full of potato ridges. Just that green field there near us. But they're in all different parts of the hill, those ridges. Is that down at actually? No. Up over shouldn't be ridge. It should be Shannon Golden Hill. That's that where Roost Hill. We'll move back onto the houses on the way down.
row on top of the stone masons used to put flags slightly about twice the thickness of that. And the stone masons in 1847-48, their wages were 4 pence a day from sunrise to sunset.
Yeah.
And they were as happy as Larry, and how the people would know that they were at work. They'd be whistling at their work of a summer's morning. You hear nobody whistling now.
To extend a very warm welcome to all in Sunday this evening. We're a little bit starting earlier than usual, and we're delighted with the turnout from different places, different counties that you've come. There's tea being served for those, some people here earlier on in the evening. So it's making a long evening. We're glad here, besides that, that Pat McNamara from the borders of Quinn and Tulla and Clooney that here in County Clare, that he was able to join us. He's gone on to Portrue. He's playing this evening, so he should have been gone out of here about 15-20 minutes ago. So there's people looking for. You're welcome, Pat, and goodbye as well, almost at the same time before we get to the goodbye. He'll give us, Pat had a best-selling tape out some time ago down there, FM radio, and Whistling Rufus, I think, was one of the leading ones. So Pat will give us a selection, probably Whistling Rufus and the Cuckoo Waltz, I think, is on as well, so maybe tonight. And anything else you think is within there, Pat. A fine player. Pat plays with Peter Moore. He does very regularly. He's very popular in these parts and in these Clare. One of the finest musicians, and I'm sure Paddy Buckley here from Tipperary, Midwest Radio, would be delighted to fit him in some night. Come along with the nights, so. Ladies and gentlemen, and we're delighted to welcome you here on behalf of Knockfierna Heritage and Folklore Group. This is our 10th year operating here in Knockfierna Hillside, and from humble beginnings, for those who were here earlier this evening during the course of the walk, you saw 10 fairly nice style, old style famine houses which have been rebuilt. The evening stayed fine while we were on the walk, which was unusual for us because during the festival of Lunasa on the first Sunday in every August, which we've been holding now for 7 or 8 years, we always got fine heavy showers down on top of us. 1995 we didn't hold any, and it was the only fine year that came. So we were lucky enough to see that it stayed nice and fine for us. We're delighted to have such a fine mix of people from different places, from Clare, Tipperary, Limerick and Kerry, and not forgetting Galway of course as well. And I suppose there's a few more counties as well. Did I include Limerick in that there, Michael? Dan Monkton over here, the man with the cap. Dan is president of our committee. Hale and hearty, and we're glad he's with us. Patsy McCann here beside us, I think he's 84, 86 or thereabouts. Patsy, am I close? Close enough, he said 84 to 86, someplace inside there. And we're delighted that he's still in fine health, and hopefully will be for another 20 or 25 years anyway. And all the others, we're delighted that the young and the old and the older folk are all here with us. And on that note, we'll go along a sad type of note with an unusual start to us here in Knockfierna. But over the years, as many of you here with us will recall, we've used to have packed houses, more so even than tonight. Tonight's one wasn't that well announced because really it was too packed on other occasions, so we just more or less by invitation on tonight's event. But from the older people's point of view, or where we would have had so many older people over the years, tonight I would like just to recall those names with the greatest of respect and with a sadness for the memory of those people. You will all have known them very well over the years, and I'll start at the bottom of my list. Really would be Ned Gyrey, who with myself was a founder member of the Knockfierna Heritage and Folklore Group from Newcastle. He was from Kerry originally but lived in Newcastle West, and the two of us started off this some 10 years ago. Ned was very actively involved in this committee. He was the first president, and he died a few years after the commencement of it. Jim Beery then had been here with us. He was from East Limerick, and he died a few years back as well. Then just at the bottom of the hill here was Michael Carmody, Mick Carmody, a fine old man here, sat with us on many a night. He was well into his 80s and recalled the dance halls and Christmas time of 80 years ago in his youth, and he died there in the past month. Jack Kelly, then you might recall, we had a battle over here on the Pig's Head at the Pig, and we went through that particular time of the seasons of time long gone when the killing the pig was relived here in great detail, and that night we presented the Pig's Head to Jack Kelly, and he was seen to be drinking porter for a good while after to wash down the pig. And he's gone down the list, and then of course many will recall the very fine voice he had singing My Little Grey Home in the West, another man in his 80s again, and he was a local blacksmith who left us. Dan Sheehan then was a nice quiet man who spent a few nights here with us also, and a very fine man to recall times past. John Crosby then, here at the other side of the hill, also died there just a few years back. Then of course another famous figure both here and elsewhere was D. Fitz, as he was known, David Fitzgerald, who was president of our committee at the time he died. And he went very, very suddenly indeed. He was at the last May Eve session, which we videoed here, recorded 2 years ago on a reasonably nice fine evening. And that was his last visit here. He died a couple of months after, so that video then in turn of course became a very sought after recording. It was quite detailed with a full house on that particular night. Most of those people that I referred to, half of them would have been here on that particular night. And that's the men, and then two of the women who had been with us, Mrs. Almer, who was a very well-known character locally, again in her 80s, and who had great detail and knowledge and memory and folk memory from the older people. She was able to tell us in detail who lived in this house and various other houses during the time of the famine. And on checking her comments during checking the records to verify her comments and information, she was proved to be correct per Griffith's valuation of 1850s. Dr. Manikin Shoy, sitting here beside me, speaking to him many years ago, indeed he didn't know who I was at the time, he just thought it was another oddball querying and asking questions, but he did say at that particular time that people like that were very important, and that they should have been recorded and should be recorded, that their information shouldn't be just brushed off as old wives' tale or somebody raving, as one might refer to. Sometimes it is, of course, mightn't be too accurate, but in the case of Mrs. Almer, when it was checked out, it was extremely accurate. She didn't have any electricity or any of the modern conveniences at any time. And many of you will recall sitting there one particular night when we had the washboard and the old timber washing board, and we went through all of the old stories and the old people, and she asked Gary McMahon or somebody what he was on about, and we still using those. To her, that was still the way of life that was happening, that they hadn't moved on with the machines. And then Mrs. Hanley, again in her 80s, who recalled many events back around the Granna side of the parish. I think that comes to 11 in approximately 5 years or thereabouts, which is a huge amount. And as we say, we remember them tonight, and hopefully they will be thinking of us in another place. I have another name down here, and I suppose someone, Dan Monkton, our good friend over, said we wrote him down. We shouldn't write him down at all because he's not dead. But he... but it wasn't Dan Monkton now. Dan thought he... Dan thought it was his own name I had put down it, actually. Hold on, says Dan. I'm still here. The other name, funny enough, that we know he wasn't dead or anything like it, indeed, and the name it was somebody who was older than all of those, and way older, and he's nearly 20 years actually older than Patsy McCann here. And he is 20 years older than him, and Patsy is 84. And that is Archdeacon Lyons, our local archdeacon in the local village, Ballingarry. He celebrated his 103rd birthday on March the 17th. He was here with us, and he's still as healthy and as alert as he was 40 years ago. And some say he will be another 10 as well. The local committee down in the village a couple of years ago, they were doing a local little journal. We do a journal here, but it wasn't. It was just a little Christmas thing that they did. And did an interview with him. Mike Hanley, the local observer man sitting down the doorway, he avoided falling into that trap of having an interview with Archdeacon Lyons. The young girls of the parish of Ballingarry were doing this journal for Christmas time, so they decided to do an interview with Archdeacon Lyons about 2 years ago. And they asked him about Ballingarry and what did he think of Ballingarry. He's there about 30 years or thereabouts now. And this was 2 years ago now. He was 101 at the time, and what did he think of the changes, what did he think of Ballingarry? And he said, from any approach road, it was a miserable place when I came, and it is a miserable place now. So, as I said, he is still very alert at 103. Now, if my memory serves me right, I was trying to shoot here on names. Many of the older people, of course, we would know the regular visitors over the years. And we were delighted there back at Christmas time, some of us, John and David O'Riordan, we went across to Shannon to Clare to do a recording up there because we felt that there was quite a large number of people there in their 80s on that occasion. David O'Riordan came and George Daly here did the video recording for us. It was 4 hours. It was quite successful and very worthwhile. As we said, we had a lot of people there in the 80s, so we thought that if it wasn't being recorded over there, we might as well go over and do it and put it on tape and have it rather than it going by the wayside and not being recorded. But on that particular night, we got, apart from aiming at the old people, we came across some of the younger people as well. And here beside us, we're thanks to Michael O'Rourke here from Tullin, County Clare, my own native place, to arrange those people and to bring them down here tonight. Our sincere thanks to him, Michael. From that area, of course, we've had Robbie McMahon and PJ Murray and many others, Denny Hunt over the years. Tonight we have, from the PJ O'Connell country in Hurling, Dermot Vaughan. If I'm wrong now, let's make sure you contradict me. And you won't embarrass me one bit. John O'Rourke then here beside me. Me Hall, he said, it isn't Michael, it's me Hall. Me Hall O'Rourke, his father right behind his back. And she's not Laurel Brown, she says she's Laurel Brown. So that's the 4 names for you. They won the All-Ireland competition recently in Thurles, excellent musicians. So they'll give us a few jigs and reels, I suppose, of whatever comes. What are you playing, lads, ladies? Reels, keep the jigs till later. Inside. Very, very fine musicians and very talented. And we're delighted, as we've often said here over the years, to have young people, even though those young people are probably a bit more experienced than many of the ones we've had here over the years. But as many will see from the video, we have Anne Phelan, who will be with us from 12 years of age, and she's now playing with the National Youth Orchestra, and many, many others. John O'Riordan there, we usually, I suppose, again, for many of you who wouldn't have been here before, our own national anthem. So John will sing our own Knockfierna home, and it will give people who haven't been here before an idea of the locality and the views that goes with it. John is one of our committee members, a man of fine voice and a good runner in his day, to tell me. And I don't know when his day was, but it was a little while ago.
Try another one.
Other counties may boast of their rich lands, where fine cattle can roam as they will. But give me a home in Knockfierna, at the side of the wind-swept hill. There again to smell the sweet heather, and to hear the old cullroo's call, with a rose tapping light at the window, and God's blessed light over all. It's there my fond thoughts will linger, no matter wherever I roam. I ask not for fame or for fortune, but give me my own Limerick home. Tora Hill will wake up in the morning, when she's clad in her mantle of grey. Knockfierna looks down on the Shannon, just to bid it Godspeed on its way. Lochar has castle-crowned islands, and the bright sparkling gem I love best, for she'll hug like a fond loving mother, to clasp them to her friendly breast. It's there my fine thoughts will linger, no matter wherever I roam. I ask not for fame or for fortune, just give me my own Limerick home. Now the joys of an old Limerick cottage, when the winter nights come along, the neighbours drop into the kitchen to fill it with laughter and song. As Shannock he sits by the corner to tell us of days that are past, while the Banattee's whole-hearted welcome will take the chill from the cold winter's blast. It's there my fond thoughts do linger, no matter wherever I roam. I ask not for fame or for fortune, but give me my own Limerick home.
In the harbour, they'll work their way in slowly after a while. Dan Monkton will do a recitation for us, one of his own choice. It has to be one of his own choice. You can sit or stand there.
Last night I was invited by some friends of mine to dine. Some lobster salad we did eat, we drank both beer and wine. We drank each other's health at times and wished each other luck. We drank and kept on drinking till the hour of 3 is struck. Then I bade my friends good morning. I went home and into bed, where I had a very funny dream. I dreamt that I was dead. The hour for repentance was then forever gone. I saw an angel far above and I was beckoned on. We moved so fast I imagined we moved on roller skates, when suddenly I found myself outside the Golden Gates. "What brings you here?" said Peter. "Don't you know that blood and sin, the bar you here forever, you cannot enter in?" I passed along in silence and hung my head for shame, while Peter's clerk, who stood close by, wrote lost beneath my name. Book for the down train, no return ticket. Next comes on an old Frenchman from the city of Paris, who from drinking wine and whisky was a piteous sight to see. He says, "Petere, Petere, at last I come to thee. On grand living I tried and sailed, and in the river Seine I committed suicide." "Oh," said Peter with horror, "your chances are but small. I might have overlooked that suicide, but that river settles all." So he just standing toward the line, just the same as me, booked for the down train, no return ticket. Next comes on a regular dandy, a boy who's never rude, who paraded the streets all night and was known as the Dandy Dude. He says, "Hello, Peter, old man. You smoke a cigarette?" "You don't smoke, Peter." "Oh, that's too thin. Do, Peter, do, pray let me in." "No," said Peter. "Admit you I never can. This place wasn't made for monkeys. 'Twas only made for man." So he just standing toward the line, just the same as me, booked for the down train, no return ticket. The last to come was the best of all, a son of Aaron's Isle. He saluted Peter with a very gracious smile. He says, "Oh, holy Peter, I scarce can stand up straight. Look on side and tell that chap to show me to my seat." "No," said Peter, "your case must first be tried. I must see your passport before you get inside." "Then hurry up," says Paddy, "or for supper I'd be late." And as he spoke, he flung his old carbine right over the Golden Gate. "Go fetch thy hat," said Peter, "thou sacrilegious lout." But when Paddy got inside the gate, he locked St. Peter out. And shouting through the keyhole, "I'm master now," said he, "but I'll give you heaven, keys and all, if we'll set old Ireland free."
Tonight Dan was hesitating whether he'd do that one or not. He didn't know if it would fit in. He hesitation, but he said, "We wouldn't frighten him that easy," he said. Now, as it is May even, I suppose one of the strongest dates in the calendar year, in the old calendar, when the older people, farmers especially, lived possibly in fear of tonight and tomorrow morning, in up to probably 30 years ago. So Dr. Manikin Shoy here in front of me, well-known historian, correspondent, and Patsy McCann beside him. So we'll hear from those two mature people about Pishogues and the beliefs and the happenings in their areas of other days.
Is this on? No, you've often heard the term the hot seat. Well, I find myself in the hot seat in two senses of the word now, here. Anyway, fires were very much associated with May Eve or Ihe Vjoltene. This is Ihe Vjoltene. Oh, yeah. And there were two great feasts in very ancient Ireland. That time they were in months, and they hadn't January, February, March, or any kind of divisions like those. But the year was divided in two, and two great feasts divided the year. One was Samhain, which was the 1st of November. The other was Beltane, the 1st of May. And some of you who may have read any of the stories of the Fianna Finn McCool will remember how during the period from Samhain to Beltane, that was through the winter, from 1st November to May, they spent the time storytelling and so on indoors. And from Beltane to Samhain, then, which took in the fine part of the year, they were out hunting. And there is one famous story in the Fianna cycle, or cycle of stories, and it's called An Bhríon Chairin, the fairy palace of the quicken trees, a famous story. And the beginning of that story is at Knockfierna, when Finn and his Fianna were out hunting on the slopes of Knockfierna, and a character called Meach, I don't know how many of you have read the story, approached them and invited them to his wonderful palace that was down somewhere near Palace Kenry direction. And they went in. It was a marvellous place, but once he got them inside, they found they were enchanted. They couldn't leave the chairs, or they were stuck to the ground and so on. But anyway, that, as I say, the year was divided by these two great feasts, Beltane and Samhain. Samhain was the more famous. Then, a little later, two further feasts were introduced to divide the year in four. And one of those is associated with Knockfierna, Lunacy, the festival of Lunacy on the 1st of August. And the other one, you'd never hear the name, oddly enough, I don't know why. It didn't survive like Beltane, Samhain and Lunacy. It was called imbue, and that was at the 1st of February. But anyway, tonight is the eve of the great feast of Beltane. And the end of that word, the tinna, of course, is a fire. And the traditions regarding Beltane were introduced by the Celts who came here to Ireland. Well, it started about 500 BC, that's 2,500 years ago. And they were spread all over Central Europe, what is now France, Northern Italy, parts of Germany, Belgium, and Switzerland. That was the Celtic land, but they came here to Ireland and they brought those customs with them. And the celebration of Beltane was one of them. And to celebrate it, they lit a huge fire, or a number of fires. And one of the things they did was to drive cattle between two fires, that have two fires for that special purpose, apart from maybe a huge big fire. And they believed that the cattle that were driven through between those two fires would be protected against disease. Now, Beltane, or May Day, was also the day on which they let the cattle out to graze. There were no ditches or fences between fields that time, and the cattle would be left up the side of hills where there'd be rough grazing, or maybe here in Knockfierna and so on. But that was Beltane, quite important. And of course it was a pagan feast and was being celebrated long before Christianity came to Ireland. But like, it's an interesting thing that even though Christianity came 1,500 years ago or so to Ireland, that so much of Beltane survived down along the centuries, so much of the pagan part of that feast. And I suppose the thing people most associated with it is the working of pishogues. And I'd imagine that nearly everybody here heard of pishogues, and the older among us will remember the steps that were taken to counteract the powers of pishogues. I remember when I was young, and special holy water was blessed for May Eve. We call it May water, and you'd be sent off to the church with your bottle and fill a bottle of holy water, the May water, and your duty then would be to go into every field belonging to your family and sprinkle some holy water in the field. Sprinkle it on all the animals in the cow house and so on. And everybody, as far as I remember, did sprinkle holy water on May Eve, but the holy water is blessed no longer. I don't know whether it is that nobody practices pishogues, but they were being practiced anyway. Whatever the result was, I don't know, but I remember one time hearing a sermon in a local church, that maybe 35 years ago, a priest, and he condemning putting eggs in hay and things like that that went on. And not alone was the sermon given in that church, but it was given in quite a number of churches in the area, so people must have been worried about it. But the thing was that some people believed that by practicing these pishogues, it's an Irish word, pishogue, charm, magic charm, that they'd be able to attract to themselves some of the produce of their neighbours' industry. For example, you'd hear of a case where somebody has worked pishogues against a family, and the cows belonging to that family would only produce a trickle of milk, and some other person down the road a bit, they might have the buckets might be overflowing with the milk from their cows. And the belief was that that person had worked Pishog and had attracted the produce from the other person. And it was very prevalent in the case of butter making. That was before the era of creameries, and butter was made at home in the dairies. And stories were told how a woman, usually for some reason or other, was blamed for working the pishogs, but she had to work pishogs against some neighbouring farmer, and they could be churning all day long, and they couldn't make a bit of butter. And the person who had worked the pishogs, the churn would be full of butter. But these are the kind of stories that circulated, and people felt they were very vulnerable, anybody with cows or, making butter. And to, I suppose, put their mind at ease and to give them the kind of consolation of believing there was a stronger power, the holy water was blessed for that occasion. But it was believed that, it was wrong to take anything out of a house on May Eve. May Eve, Ihe Bhealtaine, was more notorious than May Day itself. It was on May Eve most things would work. Between sunset on May Eve and sunrise on May Day. Now, to take fire out of a house, if somebody came in to light his pipe, he'd be immediately under suspicion that if he came in on May Eve to do it, that he wanted to attract some of their produce from the place. And if he came in to light his pipe, he'd be allowed lighted, but he'd have to sit down and smoke it out inside. Or, at that time there weren't boxes of matches and things to be got as easily as they are gotten. They weren't there at all. And if one person's fire went out, they'd come to a neighbour and get a sod of turf and take it. But not on May Eve, you wouldn't get it. Or if a person came into a dairy while butter was being made on May Eve, again suspicion would fall on them. And the remedy for that was that they'd have to take a hand at the churning. But people lived in fear, especially country people who had cows and so on. Another thing then was it was believed that by scraping off the dew of the grass of a neighbour's fields, you could again profit by doing it yourself. And the person doing that would go out with a spancel or a rope and draw it over the dew on the grass, and by doing so would attract away from the owner of that field the produce of his industry. And I heard a story a couple of years ago about some number of men who were going to a fair from Athlacka. They were going to a fair, I think, in Mitchelstown, and somewhere near Labamalaga. I don't know if any of you know where Labamalaga is. It's just on the Cork-Limerick border, between Kilfinnan and Ballyland, between Kilfinnan and Mitchelstown, off the road in the direction of Ballyland. There's an old church ruin there. It's a famous monastery, St. Mulliga's monastery. Labamalaga means the bed or the grave of Malaga. But anyway, when they were passing by or near Labamalaga, they were surprised and rather frightened to see a woman inside at that very early hour of the morning when they were going to the fair with a rope, and she drawing it across the dew in the field. So anyway, the things were, pishogs were attempted anyway up to, quite recently, and people believed that other people profited by doing it, and the victims believed that they had suffered as a result. So that is one of the things mainly associated with May Eve. There are various other things, and I have talking about Sound and Beltana, there is a phrase in Irish, Scale o Hauen go Beltana, a story from Sound to Beltana. It means a long-winded story. So I'll finish now because I don't want my story to be a Scale o Hauen go Beltana. Thanks, Dr. Minister.
That was Dr. Manikin showing just a slight little bit of information from the vast amount of knowledge that the man has. You could see that was flowing out of him. Patsy McCann, have you anything on the Red Keel side of things that you'd like to add on to that?
Much more only that there were certain people, especially if you were women, supposed to be working fish hogs. There was one woman, she was going. We watched her one night even. she was go out into the neighbour's field and drag a sheet, big sheet along the grass, and take it in. And as a line across the kitchen dry clothes, she'd put the sheet over the kitchen, the sheet over the line inside the kitchen, and squeeze the dew out of the sheet into a bucket. She was supposed to be taking the milk from the neighbour. And the funny point of it, she had only 6 cows herself. The neighbour had 9 or 10, and she had more milk.
She had 6 better ones, had she?
Oh, yes, she had. But it wasn't the fish hog, she had the better cows. That's what happened.
Were there many families in my Canley still out there? Were there many families in Rathkeil involved in pishogues, doing pishogues?
Oh, there was a lot.
Families, no, not names of the families, just the families.
There was a lot of families.
There'd be 5 or 6 practicing.
Mike and Norman was one of myself.
Up in Clare, anyway, my mother would have told me that in a place called Knockjames, north of Tulla, that in the earliest days, that all of the people practicing pishogues there used to meet at a particular place, and there's a well on the road, so it's still there actually, in the middle of the mountain, so to speak. And and all of the other people practicing there used to gather on May Eve and at other times of the year as well for conferences, I suppose you would use the word nowadays. And in that particular part of Tulla and the Knockjames district, up to very, very recently indeed, many people were quite conscious of the fact of pishogues operating. There was a postwoman operating in that area, known Mary Dolly was her name, and she had a lot of turkeys for Christmas time, and those people brought her some sour milk to give to the turkeys, and she didn't sleep a wink that night, and neither did the turkeys. They were gone mad all night, literally, you know. County council workers also visited the house one particular day to boil a kettle, one of these old metal kettles, and there was only a few sparks, so to speak, on the fire, and when they saw the fact that there was so little fire in the hearth, they said they'd move on to the next house, and the old lady sitting in the table at the hob with a shawl. No, she said, oh, not at all, so she, that'll be ready in a few minutes. So she rolled the potato from one hand to the other and hummed, and in about 3 minutes the big metal kettle was hopping, piling up the fire. Back in 1992, the time flies without a doubt, because in just looking back at this thing this evening, I knew I had written on May Eve and pishogues back a while ago, but I thought it was about 2 years ago, but when looking at the books, it was 4 years ago. So I suppose a quick sum up of those, I'll just run them through for the record tonight. For many you will be familiar, others might not, but in the interest of putting it on record, we might as well go through the whole lot of it. Eggs hidden in hay or manure in May Eve would bring bad luck. If a person called during the churning of milk, it was bad luck to leave the area while the churning was taking place and not to leave until it was finished, which was quite common, but in most of these things were very common in West Limerick and indeed in East Clare as well, and possibly other parts also. If you gave rhubarb shrubs or cabbage, etc., a person working pishogues, yours would die. If you met a red-haired person going to the fair, it was considered bad luck, so you returned home. That indeed applied to any particular fair. It didn't have to be May Eve at all. Spancels then, as Dr. Mennikin has said, spancels for tying the cow's legs were cut from the cow's tail. These were carefully guarded because if somebody working pishogues took them, they would also take the milk from the cow. I think the spancel was possibly one of the strongest weapons that they used. If they wanted a cow, even I don't think I have it written on this one, but if they wanted a cow to abort, they poured cabbage water along the backs of the cows, was another one that we've been told about. If at churning time the milk would not turn to butter, people went to Biddy early to remove the spell. I understand that in West Limerick people visited Joan Grogan, the wise woman from Rooski Hill outside Newcastle West, with similar requests.
People used to get the colt and the plough and put it into the fire.
Yeah.
Well, it would be reddening. And most time, you know, it was the butter was slow and the cream was slow and churning, especially in cold weather. And they made out and the colt would get red and take it out and give it a wheel around the churn. The spell was gone and the butter would come up after it.
That one appears regularly about the colt of the plough. When it got hot, it broke the spell, or else the old lady came running down the road asking to be forgiven for her acts with the colt of the plough. On May Eve and on the first Sunday of August, girls from the Knockfierna district laid gifts of fruit flowers on the Stricheens, which is the flat part of the hill here above us, and the heat covered. That was happening up to the 1930s. There was a story also told of a man who was living in the side of Knockfierna many years ago. On May Day he found a dead pig inside his gate. He removed the pig into the neighbour's field. The neighbour lost 3 pigs during the following months. If a person called during churning time, they were expected to say, "God bless the work," and take a hand at churning. A cow's spancel was pulled through a neighbour's land so as to take the milk from the cows and transfer it to his own. Eggs found in wines of hay often brought illness to animals and members of households. Following a sermon by a priest on the evils of pishogues, eggs were placed in the confession box. That's what I thought you were going to say a while ago there. Yeah. Yeah. It was quite common and quite effective, as many of us here over the years would gather from the different people. It wasn't a joke, it was very, very serious indeed, you know, and it did work. The present day, the fisherman going out to sea, coming back, yeah. Yeah. We had a red-haired lady here one night and we thought to cancel. But we moved on. Medals blessed and buried in each field proved successful. There's another belief for the cure. Bags of eggs hanging on a tree brought illness to animals and members of households. It was common practice in Rhode Island, including County Clare and County Limerick, to shake Easter water on all the livestock on each field on May Eve. This practice, which is fast disappearing, is still carried out by some people in West Limerick. Indeed, it is still happening because we've spoken to some people in recent weeks. It still happens, but not too many anymore do it. One of the ways of identifying people working pishogues was by observing the increase in their milk supply to the creamery. That was Patsy McCann there a while ago. Watch the number of tanks. When they did move it with tanks. In East Clare, it was very common to have friars visit farms to say Mass during May to remove the spell of the pishogues. That was very common in Clare. I suppose it was common here that the friars and people used to come out saying Mass. Michael J. McCarthy, who wrote a book, I'm not reading from this book at all now, Michael J. McCarthy, who wrote the book Priests and People of Ireland, he was quite critical of the clergy in the 1890s, and he's in Ballyporeen. Farmer stayed up all night because he was constantly being put under the spell of pishogues each May Eve, so he waited up and he caught a neighbour practicing pishogues during the course of the night, and he arrested him and brought him to the local RUC station at that time. That was back in the 1880s, and he got a few months in jail at Clonmel Assizes for trespassing only. There wasn't any other crime he could have been charged with. But Michael McCarthy back in the 1890s felt that was much more effective than all of the holy water that fell around Tipperary in those years. To prevent the spell, people put salt and holy water into the churn during churning. A woman who was reputed to practice pishogues died, and it was said that a hare ran out of her grave as she was being buried. A story from County Limerick tells of a farmer who came upon a hare milking one of his cows on May Eve. He fired a shot and wounded the hare, which he followed to a neighbour's house, and entering, he found the old woman nursing a cut leg. Once upon a time, there was a woman living near Knockfierna. Every day in summer, she used to go to bed and get up late at night and stay out all of the night. She used to make crosses with rotten pieces of sticks by the side of the road. One day she went to Mass in Ballingarry after benediction. The woman ran up to the altar in the shape of a black dog and out of the door and was never seen again. This woman was always doing pishogues. An old woman with a black shawl would milk a neighbour's cow. Usually black shawls come into these things very often. I think probably most people in the olden days had shawls indeed anyway. It was considered lucky and for the good of complexion for women to be out in the early May morning dew to put it on their hair. It had their complexion in their face. Bottles of holy water that were blessed at Easter time were used on Maeve to ensure good fortune for animals and crops. The holy water was sprinkled on the heart and the four corners of the house and the threshold before moving on to the out offices. Nettles boiled on May morning were believed to keep away illness. Persons looking for salt from a neighbour on May Eve was treated with great suspicion. It was considered very unlucky to go to a well for water on May Day. Crosses were also placed on a well on May Eve to protect it from evil. Some of those stories come from different places, and indeed in some places you will find a complete contradiction in relation to the one there where it said it was considered very unlucky to go to the well for water on May Day. Others say it was very lucky to get to the well for May water. We have the story of the three women from Matay. Are you back there, lads from Matay? The story has been told there about three women from Matay and one from Abbeyfield. The belief was whoever got water out of the well first on May Eve were going to have the produce for the year. So the three of them seemed to get there more or less at the same time. So there was a bit of a debate as to how one could get it before the other two, three. So the lady from Abbeyfield, she had kind of Wellington boots, so she just jumped into the well and out again. So they're still cute enough in Abbeyfield. It was considered very unlucky to go to the well. That one. On May Day, cattle were blessed and driven to the mountain booley and hilltop fires. Heart fires were quenched on May Eve and relit from those booley fires. It was unlucky to give a light to anybody on May Eve, as Dr. Joyce stated earlier. A light of anything or a mattress or fire was one of the major things you could not do and would not do. A farmer from Monagay area near Newcastle West had been unsuccessful churning during the month of May. While his neighbour had more than usual, he went to Joan Grogan. She was something similar to Biddy Ailey, as we said, on the Limerick Hills. She told him to bind the churn with traces and lock the doors, put the coulter of the plough into the fire, and when hot, put it in the churn. He did this, and screaming was heard coming from a neighbour's house, and his full butter supply was immediately restored. That is very similar now to what Patsy McCann is after telling us again on the coulter plough. It's the same thing. So that one did work as a preventative measure. That's about the gist of it. There are many, many, many more, and if anyone wants more on it, Knockfierna Journal of 1992.
You were talking there about the person who brought the people to court.
Yeah.
About thing. I was looking through back numbers of the Leader 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a court case someplace in East Limerick around Capamore, general direction there anyway, where one family had brought other people to court because they said they had cast spells on them at May Eve. They came into the court, but the judge, anyway, or the district justice there, he kind of dismissed the whole thing, and he said the only kind of a spell now we want here is a spell of fine weather.
Very good, very good. Yeah, yeah. That's a bit on Pishogues. It's a small bit because one could cover an awful lot more indeed. And we will take a dancer, I suppose, next. She's small and she's cold half the night up on top of the hill, and now she's too hot. So the Clare group will back her in a few reels. You said you would an hour ago anyway, boys and girls. So. Louise Mulliner from Rathkeil, I think she's about 12 now. She danced with us there for 4 or 5 years when we had the number St. Patrick's Day parade. She was one of the only young ladies that danced jigs and reels while the floor was still moving. So she's still moving herself. So the Clare group, we'll call them such, will play a few reels. I hope. We'll get a song from Pat Brosnan, I suppose, just to keep it mixed slightly for the moment, and then our good friend here, Patsy McCann, will give us a recitation of Sean Finn, who died in 1921 in Ballyhahal, and was a commemoration last Sunday in Rathkeale graveyard to mark the anniversary of his death, which took place on the 30th of March 1921. That's what we saw on the headstone. And Patsy, a very fine man in recitations indeed. He could give you recitations on anything for the whole night long. But in the meantime, Pat Brosnan will sing a song for us. Pat, thank you.
Killarney has its lily and Tralee its lovely rose, but there's a flower more dear to me than in the wildwood grows. She is fairer far than any star, she's the jewel in Kerry's crown. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn. She's fairer far than any star, she's the jewel in Kerry's crown. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn. I met her on the road to Puck when I was 22. She said, young man, one favour I'm going to ask of you. As you stroll those streets with your ballet sheets through this fair of great renown, will you dance a set with the girl you've met, your wildflower of the lawn? She's fairer far than any star, she's the jewel in Kerry's crown. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn. Well, 3 days and nights we sang and danced to the minstrel's merry tune. We ate crew beans and drank black ale till the scattering came too soon. The open roads they called to me to roam the country round. With my money spent 'twas away I went from my wildflower of the lawn. She's fairer far than any star, she's the jewel in Kerry's crown. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn. 'Twas by luck and chance that the harvest dance that our Pats the cross once more. We pledged our love neath the stars above when we kissed down by the shore. The wedding bells they soon rang out, and now we're settled down. Beside these banks we pray God thanks for my wildflower of the lawn. She's fairer far than any star, she's the jewel in Kerry's crown. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn. The pride of Erin's garden is my wildflower of the lawn.
Brosnan Pat is a Kerryman living in the hills of Atay. And then we have another Kerryman here beside us, Jim Lyons. I was worrying about him there a little while ago, and then I heard his motor car coming up the hill. And he landed. we were wondering that the wife. Then he had said earlier in the day that he might be shaking the holy water before he'd come, that he wouldn't be back before the May Eve change over there. So our thanks there to Pat Brosnan, Pat and Jim Liston, and those people from Matay have been coming here for many, many years, and we're delighted to have them. They've also a long journey to come from one hill to another. And as George has pointed out, that Pat has been 25 years corresponding for the Limerick Leader and keeping the traditions and the happenings and the good and the bad indeed over the years. He's reported some bad happenings in the Tay also with youngsters and vandalism that a few years back. We tend to read some of it, you know, Pat, and we're glad to say that things have improved a little bit. And I suppose while we were on 25 years over there,
Incidentally, that was, I don't know whether that was for shows or not, some years ago, but there was some dead animals dumped in the graveyard there. So it was
that stopped anyway. It was all right again, yeah. They ran out of dead animals. Or mad cows or whatever. Yeah.
Some people thought that was for shows.
Yeah.
They blasted it in the later anyway, good.
And of course, then while we're talking about Pat Brosnan, on the one hand, with 25 years, we mustn't forget another man who is also writing for the Limerick Leader, and he has been at it for 52 years. Dr. Mannequin Shaw. So you have a nice bit to go yet, Pat, but you're 27 years. 52 years. The same figures, my kind of reverse. But the best thing to do is remember Archdeacon Lyons, 103 and still going strong.
That's going to this week, Pat. After winning the All-Ireland last Sunday, you know?
The bright stars of the round.
The future stars.
I cured him up the stairs. Get up the stairs. But he's still going sitting near the window himself. Now, my apologies for Patsy Noonan, those who he brought so late to interrupt us for 5 minutes. But sorry, Patsy. Patsy was the former owner of this dwelling for a period of time in the 60s, or almost anyway. Very near it. So the next time Anne-Marie Noonan, Patsy is Anne-Marie Noonan's father. Anne-Marie has been with us many times in Tipperary radio recently. She's a final thing of new Patsy. My father, Patsy. My father, Patsy. So, back onto it again. Donald Vaughan from O'Callaghan's Mills in County Clare. He will play a couple of reels on the banjo. Get back there, Patsy. Vaughan. Now we'll move on to Patsy McCann from the banks of the Bann, who was at the banks of the Deal. And as we referred earlier to Sean Finn, whose anniversary was celebrated on Sunday last, remembered anyway on Sunday last in Rathkeil Graveyard. So Patsy the recitation didn't take place last Sunday, which would have been fine, I thought myself. But we'll have it here tonight instead, I suppose, and no better man to do it than Patsy McCann.
Now remember them brave Irish men, and raise your heads with pride, and think of those who freely bled, and for Ireland nobly died. Their cause it was a glorious one, as the world can plainly see. Too long in bondage we were held, but now we must be free. God rest the souls of those brave men who did their laws defy. Some weeks they last in prison cell, some on the scaffold high, more on the lonely mountain side. Their hearts both stout and brave, their last dying words were freedom, as they filled a martyr's grave. There was Thomas Ashe and Colbert brave, Mac Sweeney without dread, young Kevin Barry and Traynor, who for Ireland nobly bled. There was Pearse and Connolly by their side, who fought both fierce and bold to free the land that gave them birth, to unfurl the green and gold. Now there is one more I have to state before I drop my pen, who fought the foeman 10 to 1. He was Commandant Finn. On Woodcliff plains fell his remains, though bullets did not fail. In blessed clay he lies today, in his native place, Rathkeil.
Thank you, Patsy. As we said, we hoped or thought that we might have been able to get him onto the platform, so to speak, last Sunday. It didn't happen, and we're delighted we have him tonight, and a very fine recitation indeed. We got a very fine detail of Sean Finn and the people who fought and died during that particular time. And we didn't hear that much about many of those people on last Sunday. Do you want a word or two there, Michael?
Just thinking back, Patsy was probably one of 2 people in Rathkeil last Sunday that would have known Sean Finn. The other man was former member of the County Council, Paddy Sheehy. It would be around the same age as Patsy. They were the only 2 that went in the cemetery last Sunday, you know. And I suppose the fact that it was overlooked very last Sunday was the fact that Sean Finn captained, as well as being captained in the IRA, he captained the local football team in the county championship at 18 years of age. He was actually captain in the old IRA at that stage. But he was also captain of the Rathkeil team. That's why the club was called Sean Finn's today. It was named after him, and the local GA feature was named after him as well.
And for my own involvement with it, I was involved there with Rathkeil GA for a couple of years, and on each occasion we tried to advise the writers of the GA that it would be more appropriate to refer to the GA field as Sean Finn Memorial Park, as it was called and christened as, instead of calling it the Bog Garden on a normal basis. But nicknames seem to stick well in some places and not so much in others. But
noting that the plaque overhead the door of where he lived in Rathkeil at Main Street, which was actually prior to becoming a private dwelling, was the post office. The plaque, it's incorrect. It says that he was commandant of the East Limerick Brigade. In actual fact, it's the West Limerick Brigade. Maybe, I don't know. John Haynes' house.
You find that indeed, and we believe here that those things should be corrected, because quite often we find in research that something that may be written 100 years ago or more Someplace else you will find a more accurate version, and they have got it incorrect, even though you get people in to quote something 100 years old believing it to be true. That one is 1921, I suppose it was put up. When was that put up, that plaque, Patsy? Much later years anyway.
That's only
15 years ago.
I remember. Michael Madden was involved in it. Yeah.
You were there.
I was there, yeah.
So I'm sure Michael Hanley, the local scribe with the Weekly Observer newspaper, it wouldn't be out of his way to put in a little note that it might now be appropriate to change east to west and get something correct on an ongoing basis. They have the power.
Could probably be corrected all right and by filling the...
Fill the E's and make a double RS swinging around, you know.
That's brilliant.
What a mistake, I suppose, was made when they were getting made. The East Limerick Brigade was there to get to help the West Limerick Brigade in an ambush, and it didn't take place.
The West Limerick man.
He was.
Sean Finn, the West Limerick man.
What you call him? Donegal Hannigan.
Donegal Hannigan succeeded Sean Moore then.
Yeah, but he was there at that time.
Calling that the people of Ballyhahal had their commemoration ceremony on the 12th of March.
They had it on the day.
Yeah.
You won't draw me into common fibre at Kiel comes a month behind Michael Thanks. We are too old for that. So we're glad indeed to be able to pay our own little tribute to Sean Finn here tonight. And for those who were in Rathkeale last Sunday, I suppose you will notice also that apart from the two speakers on the day last Sunday, there was no noticeable difference between the two. I must say, from my own point of view here tonight, between the two speakers last Sunday and the speakers tonight, there has been a huge difference on the content, and we're delighted we've had the content tonight and the input. We've had Conran Gaelga commemoration here a few years ago as well on the anniversary also, which is normal for us here to commemorate and go into some detail on anniversary and events of those in the past. And hopefully that those people will never be forgotten for the amount of time and their lives indeed they gave the greatest of all things. They gave their lives for Ireland, and we won't proceed on after that really, but times have indeed changed. These young little people from County Clare have a long way to go, and Micheál O'Rourke will give us a tune on the violin. beautiful playing indeed. And the best luck in future competitions I'm sure you will go for, because that was indeed very, very good. It reminds us somewhat of Anne Phelan, that lady who has gone on over the years. At your age she was equally very, very good.
Because of the leaving us, when they've played a few tunes, they can decide to go whenever you wish after that. So another All-Ireland winner on the flute. The choice is yours. And we'll hold the microphone back here. She came from a place up near Galway, Clare Borders, Crusheen. They were famous for a famous hurling team one time. I won't compare them to any hurling team around here anyway, but normally the other teams in the big one playing would always bring a good lot of... Are you up there, Paddy Buckley? You're going to bed? A big... They'd usually bring a good pile of plasters and bandages with them when they're playing. Crusheen, where that girl came from. That's right, yeah.